It also, towards the end, it starts to end, and then it's like this huge crescendo. Whoa! And it's like just building, and it's like, ah! And then he just says what he just said prior to it. Get out of my dream! And it just keeps going. That's a great... Why don't we do an episode of that song right now? Or we can do this one.
Let's do this one. Let's do this one
right.
first, since I'm not prepared for the other one.
Okay. Would you? Yeah, I'm pretty prepared for the other one, but yeah, we'll do this.
Okay.
Good point. Let me find the right notes then, because all I have open right now is my Ocean. It's called Ocean Sides. SIDES is the name of this file. It's like little nuggets of information about Billy Ocean I can just throw in a conversation. Ocean Sides.
That's good to have.
Hey everyone ever, and welcome to 20th Century Popcast, the show where we try to understand the present while living in the past. My name is Tim Blevins.
And I am Bob Canning. And Tim...
And I am saying this with... Yes, Bob.
I was gonna say, how you feeling there? I know you probably pushed your way through that opening.
I did. I have a damaged tooth.
Yeah.
I have some wonderful to talk about on the air tooth decay, and I need to get it looked at. Not right now, but I'm only mentioning it because it's throwing me a bit. There's some words that I'm talking around an exposed nerve,
Oof.
People, and so I'm finding some of the words might sound a little different than they should. It'd be a horrible Phil Collins episode if we were going to be talking about studio.
Ooh,
yeah.
Don't try it.
Yeah, so I'm glad we're not.
Okay.
Glad we're not doing that. But yeah, I'm in a little bit of pain. But it's whining to do that. It's whining to have chosen to record something for the people who listen and then to say that. So instead, what I will say is, how about that new theme song? Maybe? We're not really hearing it right now, but I think it just played over that part. You heard it earlier today, right?
I've heard the theme song. I'm curious to see if everyone else is okay with it, because I'm okay with it. It started out, I thought it was
legally okay with it, because it's from the Creative Commons website, so I think it's okay to use it.
It should be. When I first heard it, I was like, "Oh, this is great! It's got a Huey Lewis feel. It's got a very '80s feel."
Really?
Yeah, right at the beginning, and I thought, "Oh, this is Huey-like," and then it kind of moved away from Huey and became more just tech '80s kind of coolness.
It's a chip tune. It's like a Nintendo cartridge. Chip tune. I hate that phrase, but I like that music. And it's by insert name, because you forgot to write it down here. And it's also in the show notes. The musician who performs it. God, that's awful.
We'll think of it. It'll be in the show notes. We'll talk about him next episode as well.
Yeah, we will. That's what we'll do. We'll write down the name.
And everyone
read it.
Listening right now will recall that we mentioned we would talk about him. So when we do, they'll be like, "That's right. They said they would talk about this guy," and they won't realize that when we're not talking about him, they won't remember that they forgot that we were going to talk about them.
No, I hope not. And if you're wondering who we're talking about, so am I. Check out those show notes, right? Every episode's got some show notes. Top of the show here, I'll tell you that right now. If you're already tired of this, at least go online and check out 20popcast.com. Maybe click on that website. Check out the show notes for this episode, past episodes, blah, blah, blah. The things we normally say. Whew. Maybe over-talking is not the thing to do right now with this mouth. Today on the show... Yeah, 92 is what I want to say, but I think it's 93. We're going to be talking today about a compact disc, a CD, that was kind of impactful to me in the early 90s. I don't know your stance on it, to be honest, but I guess we're going to find out. Today we're talking about Denis Leary's No Cure for Cancer compact disc. And when I want to say it came out in 1993, I can tell you it did, because I got it written right here. January 12th. 1993 is when that came out, which means it was the January before the fall where I went to Emerson College. By senior year, I was being pressured into the idea of college. Everyone kind of assumed Tim Blevins is going to go to college. His brother went there. His parents went there. He's going to go to college. What college are you going to go to? And I didn't know. I didn't have the motivation to go to college. I think we've talked before. I wanted to get out, but I don't think I necessarily knew that college was where I was headed. Were you being primed for college when you were in high school? Was that something people were pointing you towards and pushing you towards?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think I just assumed that that's what the next step was supposed to be. I don't feel like I was pressured or didn't know. I just for me, it was like, that's next. So definitely pressured, definitely was, I did some things to aid in the college acceptance possibilities. For instance, I ran for and won my junior year school class president, but did it like solely with college in mind, so I could have that on my application, and did a couple other things that junior year, because it seems like senior year, once you've applied like in the fall sometimes or the winter. So senior year, whatever you do senior year doesn't seem to matter. So I was like, that's the one thing I remember. I was doing as much as I could junior year so I could put it all on college applications.
So junior year, if that's when you're applying to schools, I'm mentioning this because Emerson College, the college that you went to, that I went to, both of us went to, that's where we met. And so whatever, we've talked a little bit about getting there. I don't know if we've ever talked about why we went there. But it's an important event that we did go there because that is where we met. We wouldn't have otherwise. And I think who knows where the lives would have gone, blah, blah, blah. I like the movie Sliding Doors, whatever. But we got there. And the reason I'm saying that is I'm trying to place when I was really aware of Denis Leary, because the main reason I went to Emerson College, the main reason I applied there, wound up applying there, was because of Denis Leary, the comedian. He went to Emerson, I guess, in the 70s. I think he even taught there in the 80s. He's from the Boston area, Boston comics. So when he was starting to get big, when he was becoming a bigger comic, and so this must have been before the album actually came out. He must have been known. There was an article in Time magazine just about him. And there's an amazing teacher that I had, this English teacher named Mr. Kiley, who I had him in 10th and 11th grade for different classes. And he was one of those people who was really pushing for me to go to college with, I think, the focus on writing. I think you're going to be a playwright was the idea back then, because that's profitable in a small town of Connecticut. So I remember him showing me this article from Time saying, here's that comedian that you like, Denis Leary. He went to Emerson College, and he gave me the article to read as a way of saying, look at the kind of people who go to Emerson College. And I remember, so that's always been in my head, that I went to Emerson because of Denis Leary. But it's kind of like, I don't know why he gave me that article. Because, I loved stand-up comedy. I loved stand-up comics. But, my favorite was like Richard Lewis, and I liked STEVEN WRIGHT. I liked Dennis Miller. I liked Ellen DeGeneres. Those were my favorites. But I knew Denis Leary because, like I was saying, I knew him from like Comedy Central. I knew his MTV commercials. He used to have these ads on MTV where he would just be walking around ranting with a cigarette in his hand, telling you about the world, telling you what he wants, what he's going to do, and what he's going to tell you, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how I was introduced to him.
So you knew him before this album?
Yeah, I knew of him before the album, yes.
Was he an influence? Was he someone you liked?
No, he really wasn't someone I knew too much about. I just knew that he was a stand-up comedian. I don't know that I had seen his bits beyond the MTV stuff. I got that he was, an edgier kind of comic.
Was he? He is, right? Or he was.
That's the persona that they were trying to push, that he was trying to push, I guess. We'll talk about the album soon.
Yeah. It's one of these episodes we will.
It's pretty, he's trying to be, I guess, edgy. Yeah. That's a kind way to put it.
I think you could say he was edgy. I think I liked that. I don't think I knew other comics like that. And I think there were a lot. I don't think they were necessarily doing the TV specials I had. So, I thank Comedy Central for having him there. But I think what you're saying is correct. I think he was edgy. To me, he was dangerous. To me, he was... What?
There it is. Yes, dangerous. That's the better way to explain it. He was not your mama's comic.
No, right? He was angry, which wasn't an emotion I saw that often in stand-up comedy. I like the idea of rants. I think I would see like John Belushi do rants on the Saturday Night Live reruns. I like the idea of rambling dialogue and, going on and on like Richard Lewis would do. I liked those things. So to see this scary cigarette-holding persona, that was basically that, spewing it in this very high-energy, high-octane attack. Yeah, I guess that was attractive to me. So when his album came out, this album called No Cure for Cancer, which is an album of his one-man show that I think he started at a fringe festival in England, and then he brought it to New York. Yeah, I rushed out and got it on cassette. I know we're talking about a CD. I had it on cassette, but titles are titles. But yeah, I got that, and I got it before I went to college. So I got it because I guess I was a fan. And did you have a lot of comedy albums growing up? Is that something you owned?
No, I didn't have a lot. I didn't have any.
Do you have any now?
I don't have any now. I have some Monty Python albums now. But I don't have any stand-up albums. And
were you a stand-up fan as a kid?
I considered myself a stand-up fan. I would watch Comedy Central. I would watch short attention span theater. I would watch the 1 hour comedy hour or the half hour comedy hour, because 1 hour comedy hour would be a comedy hour. But yeah, I would watch all those. I would watch specials and stay up and watch stuff. But I didn't own anything. And that's just a matter of, that's a lot of my pop culture in life. I know I talk about this with music a lot, but I think it really goes with comedy, because I considered myself a comedy fan, but I didn't own any comedy. Just like I was a music fan, but I didn't own any music. Everything, was slow for me when it came to ownership. And that's one thing I feel I've talked about missing out on, discovering music when I was younger in middle school or high school. But I also regret not really discovering comedy albums at that age. Because when I got to college and met the likes of you and Jonah and Brent and Steve and all these other folks.
Names that you're dropping that no one knows.
No one else knows, but
Brent's been on the show. So
Brent's been on the show. But they would talk about their favorite comedy albums and their heroes in comedy. And I didn't have that. And I regret missing out on that kind of thing. Because I think having that experience when you're younger, when it means more, it'll affect you more, is something I'm jealous of for those of you that had that experience.
I think you're right. Was there a comedian that was like your favorite comedian? Like when we got to college, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Was it Jeff Dunham? Were you a big fan of Jeff Dunham?
I actually probably enjoyed Jeff Dunham at the time.
Oh, God. Again, just on record, I did not enjoy
my favorite,
Jeff Dunham.
And you've mentioned him, and you were kind of going on this track about college and comedians. My favorite was STEVEN WRIGHT.
Oh, it was?
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't own any of his albums, but I've seen his specials. I've seen his bits. I've seen, that was how I became a fan of STEVEN WRIGHT, is just seeing, clips here and there.
Like on TV then you were seeing
huge fan of STEVEN WRIGHT. Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of like what you were saying, your teacher gave you this article and said, hey, this is a comedian that went to Emerson College. That was a huge factor in me deciding to go to Emerson College.
Was it really?
That STEVEN WRIGHT went there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That he went there, or that it was a factor?
No, that impacted you.
Yeah, no, huge that STEVEN WRIGHT went there. And I knew that Denis Leary went there, and I knew Denis Leary as a stand-up comedian. And to lesser extents, Anthony Clark was a comedian that I was aware of at the time.
Oh, okay. I didn't know him until we were
Jay
in
Leno.
college.
I knew him. And so for me, it's like, this is some weird kind of mecca of comedians, and maybe if I were to research other colleges, maybe there are more comedians that went to another college.
Only three ever got to college, and they were all at Emerson.
This is the one that stood out for me, and also I was just dying to live in Boston.
Okay, so that part I get that, but to go to the other side of it, because I didn't know that we shared that one of the reasons we applied to a pricey college that we had to somehow get money for was because comedians went there. Like, what were you expecting? Like, what was the filter? It's like, well, if a comedian went there, I got to go there. What is that connection?
I think what I was expecting was STEVEN WRIGHT, Denis Leary, other comedians went to this college, had this experience. Their life was filtered through these halls. I would like to be as funny as they are. I would like to have that similar experience. If they had this class, I want that class. If they hung out here, I want to hang out here. And it doesn't make sense, but that's sort of like the the thought that I had, the thought process I had as a dumb kid, it's like, well, if I just follow in their footsteps, then I'm going to possibly turn out somewhat close to how they turned out.
But did you want to be a stand-up comedian?
I didn't know that I didn't necessarily want to be a stand-up comedian, but I wanted to be a performer. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be funny. I wanted to make people laugh. And I heard, combined with the stand-ups that I knew of, having gone to Emerson College, I also saw in their pamphlets and brochures that they had sketch comedy troupes. And so, and again, so does every other college, but this was the pamphlet I had in front of me, and college was all new and crazy. And I had other pamphlets and they weren't mentioning their sketch comedy troupes. And so I was totally leaning to Emerson for all of those reasons.
That's crazy. No, it was the magnet that got me there. And like you're saying, I don't know if I necessarily wanted to be a comedian. Like, I don't think I went there for a job. That's the thing. Like, I don't think as a kid I was writing, and I wrote plays because before digital stuff, before you could really edit a movie on a computer and stuff at home, the only way I could see the dialogue I wrote come alive was plays on a stage, because you can set up a stage. So I thought, okay, I guess I'll be a playwright. But I also wanted to write comic books. I also wanted to, perform somehow. I didn't look at these things as jobs. I wasn't thinking like, well, I'll get a degree, that'll get me a job. I think I just thought, well, this is the venue. It sounds like you're saying a similar thing. I hope I'm not twisting your words just to fit this, but it was like, it's like a stage, or something. So it's just like, this is what this person who is a comedian. I don't think I ever thought that was their job. I just thought they were comedians. I don't think I ever thought they get paid for this. They were comedians, and that's what they were. And there was something magical to that thought, because they were voices that were doing something. Steven Wright was a genius. Did you ever get to see him perform live?
I never got to see him perform live, no, but I got him a Coke once.
You got to walk with him once,
That's
didn't
right.
you? Am I
That's
right in
right.
this story? Do you want to tell that story before we get into this? Because
sure.
That's a weird Good Will Hunting-esque kind of thing.
I mean,
I don't know.
It just goes to show that I don't know what to do around a celebrity, especially one that I adore.
Well, a decade earlier, offering them Coke was probably the right thing to do, the right way to go.
But so Denis Leary, Steven Wright, Anthony Clark, I think those were the only three. There might have been somebody else, but they were doing a special in Boston, and they were filming something to fill, in and out from the special at Emerson on Beacon Street. So the crowd was forming around them, and I wanted to see them as well. And maybe they were doing bits or something. I don't know. So I go over and I'm trying to check it out, and the crowd's too big. So I sort of just step back away from the crowd. And I just sort of realize as I step back away from the crowd that's around Denis Leary, I'm standing next to Steven Wright, who nobody is surrounding. That was I just went white, because I absolutely love the guy. Hilarious man. And he just looked so downtrodden and just didn't want to be there. So I say, something to the effect of, oh my God, hey, hi, I'm a huge fan. And he's like, thank you very much. And then the crowd starts walking towards.
A little too much pep in your impression, but okay.
The crowd, the group starts walking away from where they are towards the public garden. So I walk with them. And again, most of the people are following Denis Leary. The cameras are on Denis Leary. I end up didn't intend to, but I basically end up walking next to Steven Wright for like 3 blocks, not saying anything. And he's not saying anything. And the two of us just are walking together like we're like old buddies. And we don't have to speak. We can just enjoy our moments together. And we finally stop. We end up stopping in front of the student union. And he finally turns to me and he says, hey, do you know where somebody can get a Coke around here? And I'm like, oh, yeah, absolutely, man. I know exactly where I can get a Coke. I'm just going to run in here. I can get it for you. Don't worry, man. It's in here. I'm going to go get a Coke. So I run in. I ask for change. I grab some money. I don't know what I do. I run upstairs because I think the vending machine is on the 4th floor. So I have to run up to the 4th floor, get the Coca-Cola, run down. He's not there anymore, right? Of course. They had moved on into the public garden. And you might remember the layout that I'm kind of referring to. So across from the student union, they're now at the public garden. So I can see the crowd from across the street. So I book it across the street because I've got Steven Wright's Coke.
He needs
and
it.
I run across the street and I cut through the crowd. I'm trying to and I kind of finally catch up to him. It probably is 10 minutes after he asked where he could get a Coke. And I get there and I'm like, hey man, here's your Coke. He's like, thanks, man. So I get the Coke. He drinks the Coke. We continue walking next to each other, not speaking. And then they finally are filming something on the bridge there over the pond in the garden. And so they're starting to clear out the group. So I'm like, hey, it was great meeting you. I say to Stephen Wright. And at that moment, Dennis Leary turns and gives me like a little head bob. Like, yeah, you too, buddy. Doesn't say anything, but just gives me the head bob like I was there for him. And then I leave. And that's my Stephen Wright story.
And again, college can do this. I remember that story very differently. My impression of it was very different. I, for some reason, thought you and him walked together, like you said, but that you asked him about his career and he told you how to be funny. I thought it was this whole mentoring in a minute thing where it was like, wow, it's just like he was supposed to be getting to a show, but he took this time out of this life of celebrity to kind of sit down and talk with his...
I wish.
But that's not how it happened.
No, and if I exaggerated at that time, I apologize. But no, that's not how it happened.
I might just be remembering it wrong. I'm not claiming you're a liar. I also didn't know the Dennis Leary part, which I find hilarious. Because, yes, Dennis Leary was a hometown hero and a rock star. He was one of these comedians who really wanted to be a rock star.
Yeah, you get that
impression. And I think his response, I feel like his ears honed in on, it was great to meet you. You hadn't even interacted him. He turns around and says, thanks, pal, or whatever.
Yeah, well, he did a little, chin up, like little head bob. A hello and see you later without saying anything.
Would you claim that to be and this is a segue in a weak one, an asshole-like thing to do?
That's probably a bit of an asshole move. I'd say so, sure.
Right? That was his persona. And I think to get into this album, so this comedy album by Dennis Leary, where it is sort of this rock star level stardom for him, it starts off with a song. And this is what I knew from the album, I think. Before I had the album. There's a lot on this album that, as comedians, one thing I think in watching comedians like you said you did in the 80s and like I did as well, if you had their albums, is you would hear those bits. You would get the album, you'd be like, oh, I've heard this joke before, because when they're on a talk show, they're going to do the bit. Or if you go see them live, like I saw Stephen Wright when I was in 11th grade, and half of the act was that I Have a Pony album, which is the album I have, and the other half was new. But half of it was there, and that blew my mind. Because I think I always had the idea that they did it once and then it's just you keep coming up with new material. Right. I never thought, oh, you just do the same material. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff in this album that I think I had heard before. But this opening track, Dennis Leary has this song, Asshole, which is sort of this jaunty sort of dirge. Those words don't go well together. It's just a pop song about being an asshole. And I knew the song, and I think people got to know Dennis Leary from the song because it was on the radio. Do you remember the song being on the radio?
I don't remember hearing it on the radio, but I remember seeing the music video.
Oh, okay. Did they bleep it? Because on the radio, they would bleep the title every time you said it, which is weird.
I think they did until after 10 p.m. Maybe, you could hear it without something to that effect, but I don't remember for sure. I mean, it was easy to tell what he was saying.
Did you like this song?
I do like this song. Like, I think it's a fine comedy bit. It's a nice song, too. It's got a good melody.
He's a good singer. Here's the thing, and this was kind of a good blend. You said you didn't have comedy albums. Growing up, I had a lot of comedy albums, and something that I used to do is I basically air guitared to these albums. Like I would lip sync in my room to comedy albums and comedy acts, or I'd go down to our basement. We had a refurnished basement, and I would put an act on TV that had taped. And my sister had this big ballet mirror, so I'd stand in front of that and I would perform, and I'd try out all the gestures and the motions, because I guess I did want to be a stand-up comic. I don't know, because I only pursued it a little once, and it wasn't like a career, but I loved the acts. I loved pretending. I just liked the feel of telling jokes, maybe. And this opening song, this asshole song, it's this thing I would pretend that I wrote, and I would pretend to perform it with this accompaniment, someone on the guitar, But I mean, what 16-year-old kid would compose a song about these things? I don't know. I thought it was edgy. I thought it was a song. I thought it's what comedy is. But I don't know. I think I really enjoyed it, and I think there's that part at the end where he does the rant, the "you know what I'm gonna do" bit, which that's his bit. And it's right there in the song. And I think at the time I liked rants. I liked Dennis Miller, sadly, at the time. I liked Dennis Leary. I liked comedians who could go on a rant. I'd never heard them like his, but I'd heard versions of them. And I don't know. I think that kind of plays well in the song, I think.
I don't know if this made it onto this episode, but it's almost like that Billy Ocean crescendo of the song where it just keeps building and building and building, and then finally it ends with him again proclaiming that he's an asshole.
And it's a recorded bit. It's recorded as a song, so it works as a song. I like that. Comedians were doing a lot of rock songs in the 90s. I don't know what the attraction is necessarily. Like Sam Kinison and Andrew Dice Clay and Eddie Murphy, they all had songs. And I think they all took it kind of seriously. I think they thought they were like rock stars, like the Rolling Stones or the Aerosmith of the time. And this song doesn't necessarily have that. Like, it's a goofy song, but he has that act. He has that macho-ness. And I think when we segue out of the song, which is a funny song, and we can understand it because it's 3 minutes, we know how a song works. As the album starts, again, it's a recording of his performance. And so the second track of the album, when the bit actually starts, it's a section called Drugs, and it is too amped up right from the start. Yeah. Like, he's just too much, I thought. He's like, he's really angry, and he's really yelling, and he's really just swearing, and I had trouble with this from the start. I don't remember as a kid. I think I thought this was comedy, but it's too much. I kept track of how many times he says, okay, and he says it 29 times on the album.
Oh, he does.
Which makes me the more obsessive one to have counted it. I don't even know if that sounds like a lot, but that's like a stinger. When did you start
counting it? When did you go back? Like, did you hit a point where you're like, he keeps saying, okay, I'm going to start this over and start counting it?
Well, I didn't know that he said it. I had listened to it when I decided we were going to talk about the album. I thought, I got to listen to it again. I thought, well, I'll just do this time, because I was curious, because he has some gimmicks.
Yeah.
He has some things that he does. That's one. He does a ton of the remember this, remember that, to the audience, trying to bring them into the act. Do you remember your friend who made bongs? Do you remember lewds? Do you remember this, that? He wants to make it inclusive, so he constantly does that. Yeah. But he also has like a lot of the I'll tell you what I'm going to do things. It's like, it's this weird. You can already do a Dennis Leary joke by the end of this second track. Like, the setup to it. I don't know. Did you identify, like, a comedian that works is because you can kind of identify with something. Sure. It's funny and you're identifying with them. What's in a section about drugs for a 16-year-old who's never picked up a beer?
Not much of anything.
Like,
and it made me realize, because this is the first time that I've actually sat and listened to this album from beginning to end as an album. Like, I've heard bits here and there, and again, the way I intook comedy growing up was in short attention span theater. So there'd be comedy bits, little bits here, and his commercials and that sort of thing. And I realized that that's pretty much all I can take of Dennis Leary is like a 30-second to a 1-minute clip.
On TV, though, correct?
On TV.
I wonder if part of it is the performance. Like, there are bits on this album where he's doing something physical or he's making a sound, so it doesn't translate. I wonder if seeing him and seeing the actual embodiment of this ridiculous masculine whatever, if that makes a difference. Like, I do hear what you're saying. Like, snippets are good. Like, he has some funny jokes in this. Like, I like some of his more surreal jokes. I like the NyQuil bit. I like the bell-bottom bit. These surreal sort of jaunts that sound like his. They sound like, here's someone who wrote these jokes. So much of it just feels like he's really trying to identify himself. He really needs to be attached to the 70s. He name drops a lot of people who he thinks is cool, so you think of him in that category. Like, he makes a point, and I guess we all do this, but he makes a point of saying things like John Belushi, Jimi Hendrix, Martin Scorsese, John Lennon. Like, he puts all those in those acts so that he's in their group. Like, he wants to be this tough guy. And going out of the drugs bit, the next section is called Rehab, and I just going into that whole section, he's an angry man who finds therapy soft,
right?
And it was weird to hear that. Like, I get it. Again, I get the angle, but it's like, That's a pretty conservative angle. You know, that's the kind of angle that like Republicans now lash out at younger liberal-minded millennials, call them snowflakes and stuff like that. But that attitude of we don't need fucking rehab, we don't need to say we're sorry, blah, blah, blah. That's like the 90s cool guy act, you know, like he's telling it like it is. And I don't know, do you think he is a liberal comedian? Do you think he's a conservative comedian? Do you get a sense of his stance there?
I mean, I guess if you were to label the stance in this album, I see it more like you're saying, like a conservative, tough guy, you know, eating my red meat raw, and beating my kids. And that was one of the bits in this album that and I don't have it word for word, but it was something like he's looking forward to having kids so he can beat them. Is that right? I mean,
that's a bit in there. It's like, that's the thing. Like, I get it's a character. I'm going to assume. I don't know. You don't have to assume when you're watching a comedian. You take it for what it is. But I don't know. In the 90s, when I was listening to this, I just thought, this is anger. This is so great. He's ranting. I love wordplay, but now it's wordplay with purpose. It's so odd that would be appealing to me. Because I look at it now and I'm thinking, oh, this is a character. I don't know if it is, but it doesn't have the same pull. You know, it feels now like this is, and I don't know if it's the jokes themselves, the comedian himself, or if it's that I'm looking at it in this era where there is a lot of attacking. I'm going both ways, but now that I'm old enough, and maybe this is something that just started in the last 15 years, but now that when someone is a tough, hardcore, spoiled white conservative, they can lump liberals together because of their feelings, because of their caring and concern and their talks with parents, and to lump it together like it's a weakness.
Yeah.
And it's like, I could have learned that from this fucking album. I don't have that thought. And I don't think I necessarily saw that. Like, I get what he's saying about celebrity, and I like that. You know, like how people can do horrible things and just be on People magazine and say you're sorry. Like, I like that observation. I think that's a good observation, you know, and you're a hero for saying it, but something about his personality played differently now. And again, maybe it's me and how I'm hearing it, because I don't know, again, a 16-year-old, what are they getting out of this?
Yeah.
There are so many references to the fucking 70s. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I definitely think it's about who we are now listening to this. I think back then, for me, again, just in the snippets, it was that dangerous comedian, that edgy, different sounding guy that I was drawn to. I don't even know if I was putting together what he was saying necessarily, but just how he was saying it and the confidence he had was something I was drawn to.
Yeah, I guess that's there. He's a confident leather jacket because he actually says, have you seen that Stairmaster or something? Like, he does typical schlocky 80s jokes. How about the Stairmaster? And I find that joke funny. It's an obvious joke. I go up, I go down, blah, 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 whatever. You know, how about I have a chair master? It's like, these are jokes I could have written, so I'm sure I got those. Yeah. But it's like these little jokes that are schlocky, hack, funny jokes coming out of this angry bustle of I just could not stand this, the amped up, coked up screaming all the
screaming
time.
And the fucking
and yelling all the time.
And the noises he made. Mean, again, maybe that's
him and Tim Allen.
That's exactly what I thought. It's like, this is like just the cooler version of Tim Allen in a way, because he's just sucking on his cigarette and making these weird noises. And anytime he makes a reference to a machine, he makes that machine's noise. And like you were saying before, maybe that is different if you're actually seeing it. Maybe there was something to it. But on the album, just listening to it, it's like a third of this is just gibberish, just noise.
I do wonder if there is something about seeing it. Would that, like, I've seen the special that this album is from, or the performance. It's a much longer special. I've seen that once. I have the book of it. Like, he published the whole piece. Like, it was a one-man show.
How does it read? Because I was trying to think about this. I don't think it would read well.
Some of it reads great. I mean,
does it?
Again, I haven't read it in years, but it's a longer show. It looks like, and it's set up like, you know, like a one-person monologue. Mm-hmm. So you're not, I mean, they're in parentheses, like make sucking sounds on cigarette, gasps, grunts, like those things are in there.
Okay.
But there are thoughts that are, or that's the thing, there are thoughts in it that are organized. There's a piece at the end that's not on this tape that goes like 2 minutes without a laugh. It's just very, like the whole joke, I think, is there is this long, drawn out, I don't even remember what it's about, story that's sad or whatever, and then the punchline is the joke. You know, there's a punchline that makes that whole 2 minutes funny that you wasted it. But it does read, like in a different persona, it reads interestingly. It does read, it does come off, and it is verbatim. That's the thing, like I do remember seeing him on talk shows. I do remember seeing him on comedy specials, and he would slide this in. There's Paul Provenza used to have a comedy show on Comedy Central. What was that called? Was it
Talking with Paul?
No, but it's something like that. Stand up, sit down. Oh, I'm gonna have to look this up. I'll try to put a clip if I can find it.
I absolutely love that show because I was even aware as a kid, like the stand-up would do their stand-up, but they wouldn't be interviewed. And so I loved watching that they would get interviewed on this show.
But in the interviews, he would do his act. Like in his interviews, he would say lines from this. So, I think it reads well because they're liftable lines. They go with that persona. But I don't know. I just, after, because the next track, after this rehab bit, it's a more drugs section, I think is what it's called. And I just don't get what he's, at the end, like what he was 35 when he did this, 35-year-old. Why is he so angry about REM? Why is he so angry about Bon Jovi? Why is that the focus of this angst? And because those are the things I got at 16. Because I didn't like REM as a kid. I got that joke as being hilarious. But like he wants to kill Barry Gibb, all these things. Like I don't. He's a 35-year-old. He has a kid. Like what that persona, once I got older than it, doesn't hold up.
Yeah, I don't think I laughed much, honestly, listening to it last night. And I like, the thing is, I like Denis Leary now. Like, I didn't watch Rescue Me, but I would watch him.
Well, he's not doing that
I
now.
would watch him promote it. No, but I enjoy
so
him.
You liked his commercials?
I liked
his sound
bites?
Him
on the talk shows. I like seeing him with other comedians. Like I find him to be a fine person. He certainly does a lot.
To be a good actor.
Yeah, he's a decent actor. He does a lot for the community. He goes back and does a lot of charity events in Boston. And so he's one of those. I mean, God forbid he turns out to be a fucking schmuck like most other people are turning out to be. But he seems
that's unfair. Don't just make. I mean, we go on what we know. People still have a right to be what they are. He
seems like a good guy, and I don't know that he even does stand up much at all anymore.
I don't know.
But in his interviews and things I've seen him in, I still enjoy him, and he makes me laugh. But this did not make me laugh.
Mm-hmm. Is he wearing a leather coat every time you see him? A leather jacket?
No, I think he's kind of moved on from that.
So he has probably, right? Because I feel like a lot of people do know him from Rescue Me. I feel like people not from the 90s don't know this album. I don't think this album is considered a great album. It was great for me and important for me, but I don't hear it mentioned. And I feel like it was to persona, like he just wanted to be seen, because he's an endearing guy. Like I've seen him do jokes about his kids. He has some routine about this Darth Vader bank that makes all this noise when you put money in it, and it's funny. And similar to like if you listen to
ranting about the bank, is he screaming about the bank?
Well, that's the thing. It's similar to like, I don't know if you're ever a fan of Andrew Dice Clay, or if you know him at least. Mm-hmm. But like his stand up now, it's kind of like they're doing these, like he has a whole bit about just going to Staples and buying like a paper cutter or a staple or something, and it's funny. And there's simple jokes.
Sounds like it would be.
And I don't know if what's funny is that fall from grace where it's like, here's the angry man, or the, because Andrew Dice Clay will say that was a character. It is a character. And I'll believe that. Right. Like I actually find him endearing to listen to. Sure. But I also wasn't really caught up in the fervor that was him. But with Denis Leary, it is kind of funny that this guy's holding a cigarette and wandering around the stage ranting about a Darth Vader bank. But it's with the same energy.
It is.
And the same anger. So it's like, can you just plug in topics to this persona? I think he wanted to be this prop. I think there are people who are genuinely angry and it works. People who are genuinely tough guys and it works. I think the comparison a lot of people claim he stole his act from is Bill Hicks. Do you know Bill Hicks, the comedian?
I know of Bill Hicks. I don't know a lot of his history.
I mean, I know a lot of his act just in later years. He was a comedian, I think similar to like George Carlin or Richard Pryor, where he didn't have a lot of clean material. So if you see him on TV, you kind of see the same bits over and over again. Like he has a bit about the Beatles that I would see, but he was a funny, genuinely angry man. He was angry. And a lot of people claim that Denis Leary, because I guess he and Denis Leary, I think, were friends or at least co-workers on the comedy circuit or whatever. And a lot of people say he stole his act, that when No Cure for Cancer came out, there are actual jokes there. And so, again, this is all in retrospect. I didn't know Bill Hicks. I knew who he was, but I wasn't a fan of him. So my fandom was with Denis Leary. I mean, Louis C.K., if you want to talk about disgusting people, claims that the song Asshole was stolen from him. I mean, there's these claims that he's putting this persona together, and I like Denis Leary and all, but this album makes me think maybe he's not stealing it, but he is building a persona that might not be him. And the segment that makes me think about that, and this maybe is why I'm was attracted to this album, is after the More Drugs bit, the next track is called Smoke, and it's all about cigarettes, and it's like, I get that because not for everyone, but for me, that started out, when I used to smoke, that started out as a prop. It became more. And I would like to take 4 minutes now to praise smoking. But before I do, I will say, I get why it was that. This is why I'm saying seeing him do the act is different from hearing the album. There is something, I'm holding my hands like it right now. Yeah. I'm making the gesture right now. There's a powerful aspect to this prop. And I was never anti-smoking. I'm definitely not now. I think the world attacks smoking, and I don't think that's right. But, I was quietly blasé about it in high school. I think I may have briefly taken a stand against it freshman year, but by senior year, I took it up, sort of out of the blue, but sort of just because I saw it, and it looked interesting. It's a great angry guy prop. Yeah. And sort of a badge because, you make this choice to pick up this thing that you're preached about being poison, it's whatever. Plus it's on fire. It's dramatic and it also really helps cope with things. So it's got its uses and important uses, but it also has a persona. Do you remember when I started smoking? We were friends. We were friends for 3 years when I started.
Yeah, no, I do. You actually, I kind of just remember the moment. I feel like it was in front of 6 Arlington or something like that. And you had just come back from a movie that had a lot of smoking in it. I can't remember. Was it She's the One?
She's the One. A horrible movie called She's the One. It was so bad.
And we were in the middle of a conversation, and then you just pulled out a pack of cigarettes and lit up. And it was something you hadn't done in the 3 years I had known you. And it was just like a decision you made that you're suddenly going to start smoking. And it floored me because, I don't smoke. And I would imagine anyone who hadn't smoked up to that age would realize this probably isn't something I need to put in my lungs, but you made that choice.
Well, and I think it's a fine choice. Also, I think I made the choice to reveal it to you that way because I didn't want, I didn't want it to be like, I'm smoking now, because I felt that they're going to think I'm phony, but also I wanted people to know because there is something to it. Yeah. And there is a group mentality to it. And there's social aspects to it. And that's the thing, in this bit, I get his anger against non-smokers. He has a whole bit about the encroachment on smokers' rights. And I know it's a gray area. I get it. And it's been long enough. And that's something where it's that's also something that doesn't work as a bit anymore because it's been so long. There are people who don't remember when you could smoke in a bar. There are people who don't remember when you could smoke on a plane. Yeah. There are things in these bits that have just not aged because of how times have shifted. But I get the attraction, and even before I smoked, the attraction of that gesture, of that prop. My hands will still hold that position when I talk, and I haven't smoked since 2012, I guess, and I miss it, and I love it, and I think it's great. So I get that, and that's why I think seeing him on stage was probably more of a performance because of that.
Yeah, and the other thing about it too, that might be why this disc isn't working for us, is that you described it as a one-man show, which I always think is I think of that sort of differently than a stand-up routine, which I guess they're interchangeable, but to an extent, I always think of a one-man show as more of a performance, and a stand-up is slightly different. I'm not really saying this clearly, but it's like a one-man show has it seems to be that there might be more of a theme to it. There might be a set that we're not seeing that adds to the story, adds to what he's saying, and it's an experience. Whereas stand-up can just be, at a club eating nachos, and laughing and enjoying yourself. And so that might be something we're missing from just listening to it and not seeing it.
Or it might be the way he's trying to validate the comedy, because after the smoking segment, there's a section called Meat. And I think you have to say he's doing a character just to get through it, because it's so alpha douchey. Like that section about meat, it's just, this guy who's like, I want to eat red meat and I want to do all these horrible things to animals. I want, like all these, it's a character. In the 21st century, I think we have the whiny hipster tries to be sensitive to get laid. But in the 90s, I think we had this, the person who just thought, like talk big, hunt animals, blah, blah, blah. And it's just, what was I attracted to by this track and this persona and performance? Because it's disgusting. And I think you can frame it in it's a performance piece. It's an examination. But at the same time, I don't know. I think because it was published as a book, because I was a kid and I thought it was edgy, and because he did it at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, I think that was one of the Fringe Festivals, I've always had it in my head, like you're saying, like this was more of a one-man show. There's more to it. But this is his stand-up act put together. These are bits he worked out in clubs, in theaters. So it's a stand-up act. And I don't know why it, like, I wish I had found Richard Pryor in high school. I wish I had found George Carlin. Not that I'm a huge fan now, but at least I wish I had found, I'm glad I found like Richard Lewis, like these comedians who were daring and doing something. And I don't think he was it. I think because he was on MTV, because he had that rock star angle, he was accessible. He was of the time and I could get to him. I didn't have to go back and research, well, what Richard Pryor album do you look at? I didn't have to come to that. Plus, Richard Pryor is dangerous. Richard Pryor is a dangerous comedian who is actually talking about things that make you uncomfortable. I guess the last track before the songs, the segment called Death, that might be the strongest bit, I feel like. Because that's the one time I feel like he's talking honestly. And this was the thing, and some of it's cut from the album. This was the part of the show. You talk about watching him. I think he sits down, and I think his voice calms down, and I think he tells a story. With one people shows, I always think of, it's a storytelling. It's almost laughable that way. And I think he gets into some pretty morbid areas here, and on this listen, it's the one time I kind of buy that. He's identifying too hard still with being a New Yorker. It's like, we're a New Yorker where you're always at risk, which, by the way, he's not. He was raised in Massachusetts, but he's talking about the risks of being there, this thin line of of survival. And that, sort of got to me. I had never heard anything like that. I'm talking about, I wish I had found these daring comedians. I guess when I was in small town Connecticut, not exposed to death, but fearing it, I'd never heard a comedian talk about things like that. So, and you got this guitar kind of burning coming in, this playing in the background. So that's also like a performance, that might be why this appealed to me, because it's not the last track. There's a track, suddenly it becomes a song at the end, the Downtrodden song. Like he's talking, the guitar builds, and then it becomes this thing that sort of sucks. He thinks he's a rock star. He thinks it's clever, but you're just ranting over guitars, and you don't see this on the tape, but I think at the end he falls dead, and the guitarist on stage picks up his cigarette, smokes it, and walks off. So yeah, there is like that performance direction, I guess. And when you look at the title of the show, I get it. But it doesn't. And then there's two forgettable tracks, I think, right after that. I don't know. Did you like the little songs at the end after that?
No, not really. I can't even remember how they went.
One's kind of like a little Irish folk song, which is funny. And honestly, it's been in my head off and on for 25 years. But I don't know why it's on this album. And then the last song, Voices in My Head, I probably as a kid thought it was a real song. It sounds like it's got like an REM guitar in it. It just sounds like a pop song, and it's pointless. But the buildup of this album, I don't know. I mean, I'm happy that it got me to college, but it didn't age well. So I feel like we're both there on that.
Do you think for you there was some power of suggestion with your teacher who presented the article with Denis Leary in it, and suddenly Denis Leary is this important figure, and you might have had that sort of thrust upon you?
Wouldn't it be fucked up if that's true? I don't know. I mean, what prompted him to think Tim likes Denis Leary? That's why at the beginning and when we were putting this together, I was confused to when the album came out. Because if this article about Denis Leary got me to want to go to Emerson, I can't imagine Time Magazine would have covered him before the album. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the kind of thing where it was handed to me. It has an article from respectable Time Magazine. Douchebag Joel Stein writes for Time Magazine, but still Time Magazine. It was shoved in my hands as a way out of town. Go to college. He went to this college, so maybe in some sort of way of wanting to, I think you just said this, wanting to identify with that. Because that was going to be my ticket out. I was like, okay, now college is decided. I got to get this cassette so I can bring it to college so people know I'm into them. Maybe. I mean, maybe I'm that blank of a canvas. Jesus Christ. That I'm that moldable that I can adapt and latch on to something. Because I used to like the album. I used to listen to it a lot.
We're all kind of moldable at that age. We're trying to make our own decisions, but we're certainly being guided by the world around us, influences, teachers we respect, that sort of thing.
But it just seems like I liked it for the reasons that I don't like it now, or I was doing it. Like I was trying to find a persona. I'm the kid who likes Denis Leary. It was like the Sex Pistols album I brought to college that I got from BMG. I like the Sex Pistols. No, you don't. I mean, I do, but you don't know anything about them. You just have the album there. I remember playing that in because in dorms you would leave your door open. At least I think I did anyways. Your first couple weeks you're just desperate to meet anyone. I think we've talked about this on the show before, and so you play stuff in the stereo that you think is going to maybe get people's attention. It may not be stuff you like, and that was the Sex Pistols. I had two people pop in. It's like, oh, it's my Johnny Ron. We have talked about this before because I remember saying that sentence, and it's true. You want to identify with that. And maybe this was the comedian, which is weird, though, because I was putting so much energy into buying Boku so I could identify with Richard Lewis. Like, I had that comedian. So I don't know what it is with fucking Denis Leary. Like, why didn't you have this tape? Why weren't you interested enough in him? I guess you didn't have comedy albums, but I'm sorry if I missed it. Was he just another comedian to you, not with this impact?
Yeah, he was just another comedian.
Did it mean anything when he nodded at you?
Just that I had no interest in speaking to him. That didn't mean a thing. He was just another comedian. The album was a staple of our dorm room, but not something we really listened to, and not that I remember listening that often, but it was there.
But you remember it so was the cassette just out, or was it the book? Like what, because it's a very memorable colors and pictures. I think the cassette and
the book. I think you had the book. Yeah, you had the book. I remember the back cover where he's like sitting on the floor and it's a low angle picture of him. I think it's either on the back cover of the book or maybe it's on the CD. But yeah, like I remember Denis Leary being a part of our college years, but I don't remember listening to Denis Leary. Does that make sense?
It does.
Because he was a prop. He was kind of a prop for us. It's like we were stand-up comedian fans of all shapes and sizes, including the angry ones. It'd be interesting to edit that album down to just the actual jokes, setups and jokes. Take out the repetitiveness, take out the okays, take out the sound effects, see how long the album actually is.
And also see, is it a comedy album? Because maybe it is a performance piece. Like I kind of want to watch this special only to see what it is to see him. Because he probably has some sincerity, right?
Yeah.
He probably has some 90s hair too, but he probably has some...
And he's certainly engaging. Like I said, I really enjoy him on all of his like little interviews and specials and things. He's an engaging personality, and I'm sure he was in this stand-up special.
Do you think that Denis Leary considers himself a comedian, or was it just it was like like when like with me, with my fucking playwriting, so go off to college, he was in England. He wrote a performance show. He was a comedian in England. He wrote a show, got into this festival. So now it's a one-man show, and that got him to his fame. Like, do you think he intended this? Because again, he's a good actor. He's good in Suicide Kings. He's good on Rescue Me. He was good on that show, The Job. Yeah, I've liked him in a lot of the
Judgment Night.
Kind of a fun. Well, he's in Judgment Night. I actually haven't seen Judgment Night. I'm thinking of him in Demolition Man, where he is just doing his routine, where he's telling you what he wants to eat a cheeseburger, and he wants to do this. Yeah, he's going to tell you, and then he does. Even in the future, I'm going to tell you. I don't think I'm not going to watch this, and I don't think I'll ever listen to this album again.
I have no reason to listen to it again.
No. Sorry to make you listen to it this time.
Hey, that's all right. It's what we do here at 20th Century Popcast. We go back and we listen to things that we didn't need to hear again.
Oh, and if I wanted to go back to maybe listen to other times that's happened, how would I do that?
Well, you could go to 20popcast.com, where you can find all of our old programs, all of our old episodes, and go back and
our old-time radio programs
and listen.
That's true. You can see the most recent, or see that the most recent episode is streaming, and then listen to it. Find past episodes. You can subscribe to us. If you use Apple, if you use Stitcher, if you use all these sorts of Android devices, you can find links to subscribe to the show there. You can follow us. I think there's links there to follow us on Twitter. I'm at Subcultist.
And I am at R.H. Canning.
And you're at a glass of water, it sounds like.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go on. You usually have a lot more there, so I took a sip. Sorry about that.
I'm learning that people don't really like the end of the show, so I'm trying to kind of compact that. Well, I mean, people give up, probably, right? Right. But yeah, check out the website. That's got some information. But what about you? You've got some things online that are worth mentioning. I just saw, but did not yet read the most recent post for your blog.
Yes, I have got my mixtape blog where I'm going back and listening to and then writing about my old mixtapes. And I just posted a recent one about my all Harry Connick Jr. mixtape.
Hey, that's relevant. What's the name of this website?
Yeah, it's superultramegamix.wordpress.com.
superultramegamix.wordpress.com?
That's it. And I'm thinking of adding Sister Studio in there as well.
I can't. That's cruel. I can't do that right now. So yes, check that out. Check out My Exaggerated Life. Is that also...
That's still out there. Yeah, you can look at old cartoons. I haven't posted anything new in a while, and I apologize if anyone out there is a fan. But that's there too. Exaggeratedlife.wordpress.com.
So that's a lot of plugs. People love plugs. What was I saying? People want to hear more plugs. Yeah. Check out google.com. It's a good way of finding things. And also petco.co. It's the British pet food company. All right, that's it. That's our show. Thanks for listening. Why don't you say something as a catchphrase, and that'll be the last thing that we say.
Keep on going, y'all. No. I'm just going to really try and say the most bland, stupid thing I can think of until we come up with something better.
And then I'm going to say success. Did you mean to say y'all? Is that how you say it? Like every now and then a twang can come out of somebody. That can happen.
That was my natural y'all.
That's an Oneida y'all? Really?
That's an Oneida y'all, sure.
How into the mid-New York is Oneida?
We're right there in the center.
The Hicks part of New York, would you say?
Yeah, there's plenty of Hicks around there. There's actually a Hicksville.
Really?
Yeah, I think
in New
so.
York, that's where people... Wow.
Yeah.
Really? That's a cruel joke. Do you think that was to attract more Hicks? Or do you think that was someone who got out of there naming it and it just stuck? That's too bad. I use that word too much, but that's too bad. I would be using it all the time if I lived next door to Hicksville in Smartsburg or whatever town is next to it. Oh, Oneida.